There are certain passages in the Torah that seem so simple that we almost pass over them without noticing how profound they really are. The commandment of Shiluach Haken, sending away the mother bird, is one of them. Moses tells the people that if they happen upon a bird's nest while traveling, and the mother is sitting over her eggs or her fledglings, they should first send the mother away before taking the young. Then comes a promise that catches our attention because it appears so generous in comparison with the commandment itself, so that it may go well with you and you may live long. There are only 2 mitzvot in the entire Torah that carry this explicit reward. One is the commandment to honor one's father and mother, and the other one is this, involving a bird's nest encountered almost by chance along the road. That pairing has puzzled commentators for centuries. We understand why honoring parents might be connected to long life. Parents gave us life, nurtured us, sacrificed for us, and shaped who we become. But why should showing consideration for a mother bird receive this very same promise? Perhaps the Torah is teaching that compassion cannot be measured by the size of the recipient. A civilization is judged not only by how it treats its parents or its leaders, but also by how it treats the weakest forms of life entrusted to its care. The person who has learned to show mercy even where no one is watching has begun to cultivate a heart shaped by compassion. But the rabbis complicate this beautiful reading. In the Talmud, in the tractate Berachot, it says that someone who says in a prayer, "May your mercies extend to the bird's nest," this person should be silenced. The Talmud asks why. One explanation is that such a statement suggests that God singles out one creature for mercy. But another explanation is more surprising. We should silence that person because he says, and in quotes, makes God's ways mercy when they are really decrees. In other words, the rabbis resist the idea that we can simply explain God's commandments by saying, God did this because God is merciful. The mitzvot are gezerot, they're divine decrees. You do them because God commanded. We are not always given access to the reasons, and we should be cautious about assuming that we understand them. And yet I am still moved by the idea that Shiluach Haken teaches us about mercy. Perhaps there is an important distinction here. The commandment does not have to tell us something definitive about God's emotions in order to teach us something about our own. Whether or not the mitzvah was given because God feels sorry for the bird, obeying it asks us to pause, to notice another living creature, to restrain our own desires. A divine decree can still cultivate a human virtue. The Talmud then takes the question in an entirely different direction. In the tractate Kiddushin, the rabbis tell us of a father who asks his son to climb a tree. The son obeys his father, thereby fulfilling the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. Before taking the fledglings, he sends away the mother bird, fulfilling the second commandment, the one that promises long life too. He has now performed both commandments that explicitly carry that reward. And yet, as he climbs back down the tree, he falls to his death. The Gemara, the Talmud could have told us a different story. It could have chosen someone careless or disobedient. Instead, it chooses someone who has done everything right. The story forces us to confront a question that many of us have asked in one form or another. What happens when life refuses to cooperate with our understanding of justice? What do we do when goodness is met with suffering instead of blessings? How do we continue believing when the world seems to contradict the promises we thought we understood? According to one rabbinic tradition, an event like this became the turning point in the life of Elisha ben Abuya, one of the great sages of his generation. Seeing a child perform these very commandments and then die shattered something within Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya. If this is how the righteous are rewarded, he concluded, perhaps there is no justice after all. He abandoned the faith and became known simply as Acher, the other. Whether the account is historical or symbolic, it's beside the point. The rabbis understood something about the human soul. Faith is rarely destroyed by abstract philosophical arguments. More often, it is wounded by disappointment. It is shaken when prayers seem unanswered, when somebody dies young, when an honest person loses everything, while someone who's dishonest prospers. When we try to live faithfully and discover that righteousness offers no immunity from grief. What is remarkable is that the Talmud does not silence the question. It does not accuse the child of secret sins or tells us that the father lacked sufficient faith. No, it allows the tension to remain there. Some of the sages suggest that the promise of long life refers ultimately to the world to come rather than to the length of one's earthly years. Whether or not that explanation satisfies us completely, the conversation itself teaches us an important lesson. Judaism has never been afraid of difficult questions. Our tradition is strong enough to hold them. Perhaps the greater danger is not asking the question, but allowing the question to change the kind of people we become. There is an irony that I find deeply moving here. The rabbis warn us not to claim that the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKen proves that God's ways are simply expressions of mercy. Yet, the commandment itself can still form us into people who practice mercy. We do not have to know exactly why God commanded something in order to recognize what the practice can do to us. The Torah does not promise that we will always understand God's ways. It does insist that we remain responsible for our own. When suffering enters our lives, we usually want explanations. Sometimes they come, but often they do not. The book of Job never receives the answer he expected. Moses himself is not told why the righteous sometimes suffer. Even the Talmud leaves this story unresolved. What the Torah never leaves unresolved is the question of how we should respond. Disappointment can harden the heart. It can make us cynical, suspicious, unwilling to trust, unwilling to love, unwilling to give, because we have concluded that goodness is pointless. That is a temptation. And the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKen quietly pushes us in the opposite direction. Even when the world does not always reflect the justice we long to see, we are still commanded to practice compassion. Perhaps that is the deepest meaning of this passage. The reward promised by the Torah is not an invitation to perform mitzvot as though they were transactions in a spiritual marketplace. It is an invitation to become the kind of people whose lives are shaped by mercy rather than bitterness, and faithfulness rather than resentment. We cannot always choose what happens to us. We cannot guarantee that every good deed will be rewarded in the way we hope. What remains within our power is the decision that confronts us every day, whether life's disappointments will make us less compassionate or more compassionate. The mother bird flies. The child in the Talmud falls from the tree. We are left with a mystery that has accompanied the Jewish people for thousands of years. Yet, even in the presence of that mystery, the Torah continues to ask us to choose kindness, to choose mercy, and choose faithfulness. We may not always understand God's justice, and we should be humble about claiming to know God's reasons. But we can still allow the mitzvot to shape the kind of people we become.